there, and welcome to the Curious Collective podcast, conversations designed for the conscious community to bring awareness to the holistic approaches that are out there. So tap into the wisdom and knowledge of our guests to extract what you need to live as your true soulful self. Today with us, we have the beautiful Annie Richardson from the Heart Grove, who is here to teach us all about everything that she does, but also a little bit of human design. So I'm going to pass you over. Hi there, Annie.
Hello, Kate. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and share this beautiful, amazing tool with you all. So again, my name's Annie. I'm from the Heart Grove. The Heart Grove is a sacred container that I've created to share with you my gifts, my life journey. I'm a wise woman. So I've been through all of the maiden, the mother, the wild woman, and I'm now in my crone phase. So as a part of that journey, I've learnt and studied many things, but human design was that one thing that really, really just got into my veins, into my bone marrow. So I share that a lot with women, predominantly with women, but with people from all over the world. And I use it in a multimodality approach. So a lot of the times when we're doing human design or we're looking for anything in our life, we feel lost or something's just not adding up. And if there's a tool that can help you reconnect to yourself, such as human design, then that's what I like to provide. The keys to yourself.
I love that you've said the keys to yourself. And it's so true. I know you and I have had many a conversation where we've gotten into a rabbit's hole of human design, and you'll just say these things to me and I'll be like, ding, ding, like epiphanies. Yes, that is so true. So for those that aren't really sure what human design is, can you just share a little bit about that?
Yes. So human design is an experiment. It brings a multimodality approach. So it brings the Ching, it brings the Kabbalah, which is the tree of life. It brings astrology, Jungian psychology. It brings a whole bunch of things together that allow you to be able to look at your unique blueprint. So it's very similar to astrology in the sense that you need your time of birth, where you were born, your day of birth. And if you can't find or you don't know your time of birth, there are ways to kind of track it down. So when you put that information into the system, it spits out, like very similar to astrology, it spits out what's called a body graph. And you can get these free all over the internet. There's heaps of places that do them for free. So you can find out your profile and your type.
And I know that when I first heard about human design, I was like, oh, what is this? And as intrigued and curious as I always am, I got onto one of the free ones and it spat out, generator, blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at this thing going, what the heck is this? I don't know what any of this means. So I find, for those new to human design, it can be quite overwhelming.
It is very overwhelming. And it's like, what are all these numbers? What are all these figures? And myself, a few years ago when I first found human design, I was like, what does this mean? And human design is quite interesting because the programs that they have where you can generate your information, it works in 24-hour time, and it also works in American dates. So often we can get it confused. And in my case, I'd put the right information in, but the wrong way around. And so it generated that I was a projector, and I didn't really feel into that. So I kind of pushed it aside for about, 6 to 8 months, and then came back into it and put the information in again. And then I was literally blown away. And that's a reaction we get a lot from people. It's when they find this out about themselves, they're either like shocked, they cry, they feel seen, they feel heard. And it's always a really, really profound experience finding human design, because it is like that. It's like, wow, how do you know that?
I know, I agree. It's like you can see me naked, like stuff. I'm like, oh yeah. But you mentioned just before, when you first typed it in, you came up as a projector, and I know that I'm a generator. So are there other kinds that you could share with the listeners?
Yes, of course. So there is the 4 main types, but there's actually 5, because the 5th type is a variation of the 4th. So we have our manifestors of the world, and they are about 10% of the population, and they are the initiators. They are, I guess we're going to use the word aura here, of energy, the way that their energy is. So and they initiate, they get in there, they make things happen. They've got a very closed aura. Again, only 10% of the population. You've then got your generators. And your generators are, I like to call them the beautiful worker bees of the world. It's like I always say this, if you're building a city, your manifestor is the one that comes in and goes, I have an idea to build a city. And then the generators will be like, I will build your city. So they get in there and they build. You've then got the projectors, and the projectors are, again, a small percentage of the population, about 30%, same as the generators. And they are like if we're building a city and we're using that analogy, they are like their supervisors, and they are like, you're doing that wrong, you're doing that. They're very wise, they're very wise, and they just know things. And then the fourth type is the reflector, and the reflector is like the constant observer. They have no centers defined. The fifth type is a manifesting generator. So they are a generator, but it's like, I like to sort of say they're like a generator on steroids. So they have a little bit of that manifesting ability, but they still are generators. So yeah, 4 types, but there is 5, including the manifesting generator.
Yeah. And they're really great analogies to sort of understand each of those 4/5 types as well. And I know you ran charts on all of my family, and I've got 3 manifesting generators in this house. I'm a generator, and my son George he's a projector. And you were like, "Oh, Kate," and I once sent you a picture where we were renovating our pool yard, and you're like, "Oh, generators be generating," because you're like, that's what happens in that home. And what's the breakdown of human design in your home? Who have you got that and how do you deal with those sorts of different designs within the home?
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to step you back a bit. So as a part of human design, we do have the type, which is just what I explained there about the 5 types. But in that, you've also got the profiles. So human design is like an onion. It just, there's layers and layers and layers. Again, astrology, we're, surface level, and then you go deeper and deeper. So the profiles are very important. And Kate, you're a 3/5. So you're a 3/5 generator. So I just wanted to sort of like give that in there as well, because it's a very important aspect of human design. So my family makeup, I have a pure generator partner. I have a manifesting generator son who's a 4/6, and I have a projector daughter. She's a splenic projector. So again, more layers in human design. And I'm the token reflector. So yes, that's our family dynamic, and it kind of works for us because it's something that I do in my work, where I work a lot with the families, and being able to help parents and women especially understand who they are, so that then they can understand their families and their children. And it's an amazing tool to have, to be able to get people to respect who you are and understand your own energy, as well as understanding our little people and our husbands and our partners. So
really valuable, because I know in the past you've shared with me different ways to approach talking to a manifesting generator. So, offering them the 2 options. So are you going to have Weet-Bix or porridge? Instead of just saying, what do you want for breakfast? And that has made a massive difference in my house, just that one, drop of golden nugget knowledge. So even the way we speak to people within different designs makes a difference.
It really does. And when you understand your own design and you can understand your friendships, it just makes life richer, because you can work with them. Like, for example, Kate, being the generator, you have a sacral response. And I know that you like yes, no answers, because you can feel into that straight away. It can be, do you want to wear a red shirt? Yes, no. And it's instant. It's like you are using your power, your sacral power. My son manifests. My son, because he's the manifesting generator, it's a little bit different. They've got I always say to people, when you're dealing with a manifesting generator, just imagine their energy is a lot more ramped up. So the generators are nice, consistent, walking up the stairs, creating the city. The manifesting generators trying to get there as quickly as they can, and they're bounding up 2 steps at a time, but they probably stumble and fall, and they've got to go back. So we all get to the top of the staircase at the same time. It's just how we get there is very interesting and unique.
I love that. The different types of responding in human design really fascinate me, because when you learn your own blueprint and how to respond to something, it makes such a huge difference. Are you able to talk into the different ways to respond?
Yes. So as a part of our type, So we'll use Kate, you for an example. You're a generator, and you get frustrated. So your not self theme is frustration.
Yes,
So
it is.
that happens, when you are not in alignment with who you are, your not self theme is frustration. And your way to inform is to inform. So you need to let people know what you're doing. A manifestor, their not self theme is anger. They can get really pissed off with people and things. It's because they're here to initiate, they're here to get things done. And if you get in their way or something gets in their way, they're going to get angry at you. But they really want peace. So their way is, again, to inform. They don't have to ask. They never have to ask permission. They just have to say, I'm doing this, so that everybody can get out of their way, so that they get angry. Manifesting generators, again, are the same as generators. So they still have the same frustration, but they can also have a tendency to have a little bit of that anger that comes through from the manifesting side, because you're in their flow. Get out of my way. The projectors, their not self theme is bitterness. So they get very bitter. And their authority is that they've got to wait to be invited. So it's really hard for them because they need to be invited before they proceed. What happens when the projectors just go out and make stuff happen is they get rebuffed, I suppose, or they don't get invited. And so then they become really bitter because they're like, no one wants my stuff and no one wants to know. They've got to wait. They've got to wait to be invited, or for the invitation to come to them. And that might be a universal invitation. Reflectors, not self-theme, is disappointment. And I can hand on heart tell you that it's a constant disappointment. It could be disappointment just in humanity. It's just a disappointment. And our authority is we have to wait a lunar cycle. So again, that's very frustrating to wait. But the more you honor your own authority, the more things just flow. So it's tricky, but it's fun. And anybody who does it, as you've known, when you feel that not self theme of frustration, you know, if something is not in alignment with me, what is happening?
It's a great awareness, as you know, and especially when you know how to respond as well, because you can actually sit back and go, that's what's happening, instead of being like, what is happening right now? Yeah.
And our beautiful generators, such as yourself, you want to generate. I know, I joke all the time, generator's going to generate. The problem is you over generate. So you overwork instead of giving yourself grace, because you've got to be busy. So you're really prone to a lot of burnout. But generators got to generate. But at the same time,
once you know that, like, I know now that in order to live my design, I need self-care. I need that inner nourishment. And part of that, I use my sacral response for it now. I'm like, is this correct for me? Yes or no? So, so many beautiful skills that human design has given me. One other part of human design, I mean, multi-layered onion depth, all that, but there's one other beautiful part that you taught me, and that's about your authority. So I know we spoke into, if you've got an emotional authority, you've actually got to feel the feels. So are you able to talk into those?
Sure. So except for reflectors, every other type, because we don't have an authority, we just have to wait for the lunar cycle. And if you are a reflector and you do your chart, can you please reach out to me, because we are very rare. There's only 1% of us in the world. The authorities are very different. So it depends on what is lit up in your chart. So when you do your body graph, it'll come up that you might have an ego. That just means that your ego is lit up, or it might be your heart space. So you're an emotional manifestor or an emotional generator, or a pure generator, which just means you're totally sacral. Projectors also have another authority, which is splenic. So the splenic authorities are they have that very similar to the sacral, that you just know, you feel it in your waters. Splenic projectors especially fascinate me. My daughter's a splenic projector, because I can literally say to her, how does this feel? And she'll know in an instant. It runs in their body. And it's when they can trust themselves with that, and they know. Don't second guess it. That's what we're doing. Like, if she ever says to me, I want to get out of here, we're out. That's how much I trust her internal guidance.
That's beautiful.
So my son, for example, and you've got these as well, they're emotional manifesting generators. So it means they've got to ride the wave, and the waves can be big waves, or they can be little waves. And when we teach our little people and our adult people how to ride the wave, they can kind of regulate a little bit better. So we know that this, and you've used this language before, Kate, with your little people, it might be a long wave, and they got to ride it, and you got to wait until they're finished.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time when they're riding the wave, especially manifesting generators, they don't have a fast yes and no, because they've got to wait for the wave. So they might say, for example, you might be able to get that yes, but because they're still riding the wave, you might have to ask them again, and then they'll be like, oh no. So when they can learn their wave, they might have to just wait, and it might just be, I need 5 minutes to think about that or feel into it, or I might need 2 weeks. So that's a really big decision. But again, honoring us all in life and understanding that's their processing. And when we understand that, especially as parents, when we can understand our children, it makes it so much easier, because we stop fighting them. We speak their language.
Oh,
So,
Annie, it's huge. You've given me so much just with the stuff that we've done together, and just knowing that it's a wave and it's actually not going to be forever. And to the analogy, for me, I love analogies, that it's up and then eventually it comes back down, and I'm just hanging out over here where it's coming back down, just waiting, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get into human design? Like you said, you found it and then you waited 8 months. What made you dive back in?
Oh, you sent me a link.
Oh, it was me.
It was you. Yeah, you got me back into it a couple of years ago, and I'm a 5-1. So my first line, and these are the lines here, we've got our conscious and our unconscious. My line 1 is I'm an investigator. So when there's something to know, I will go down the biggest, and when it feels right, I will go down the biggest rabbit hole of your life. So when I found out and it pulled up that I was a reflector, I can honestly say to this point in my life that I've had these moments in time where something happens. It's like a spiritual awakening. And this was one of those. It was another one of those moments where I just was like, oh, hell, this is. And I cried and I laughed. And it was a 3-day bender of just what the hell. And then I thought, I need to know more, because when you dig into who you are and you find things that makes total sense, you can't stop, because it's like we always forget who we are, or we've lived our life and we're conditioned by so many people. So human design was that gift for me. So I went down the biggest rabbit hole of my life, and I spent the first year just experimenting myself and understanding me, and running all my friends' charts and running all my children's charts, and giving myself a pat on the back to say, wow, all of these things that happened in your life, this explains it. It's like I had answers to everything. So after I'd kind of experimented and worked out my lunar cycle and all that, I then just started studying. I couldn't stop. And I went through all the certification process, and I books and books and books. And every time I turn around, I was reading. You'd see me at
I love it. I love it, because you just keep sharing little pockets of wisdom with me. I'd be like, yes.
Yeah. And I just, so I went down that whole certification, and, it is the gift that keeps on giving. There's, you never know enough. But what is the true gift is being able to help families and being able to help my friends and people, because you can go and get readings done and they're very similar. And I sort of always say to people, go and feel into who's going to do your reading, and ask yourself what you really want from it. Because anybody can do that for you, but it's what you want. So I find that my sessions are very tailored, and I like to just sit down and say, what are you looking to get out of this? What can I show you so you can read this yourself? Opposed to just handing over a recording or a PDF, and then you look at it and you go, I still don't know what this means. So I like to teach people how to read their own charts so that they can pick at it, because it is, as I said, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Man,
and then be able to read their kids' charts.
Oh, 100%. The kids' chart's huge. So I love what you did with me. I'd had 2 readings before, we sort of got together when you were in your depth of like, feed me more. And I'd got them, and I had these picture of my chart, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty. And I'd had them tell me stuff about it. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. That is exactly me. But what you did is you printed it out and sat with me, and you were circling stuff. And, that's when you told me how the different ways that I can speak to the children, specific to their design. And I can say that the practical things you gifted me, even talking to my husband, like beautiful ways that I can support his design, based on my own. It's just a whole new approach, and really valuable. So I really encourage listeners to, feel into who it is that you want to do your reading, but go further than just getting the 12-page printout that you've got sitting on your desk for months and don't even look at, and get stuck into it, because it's a game changer.
It is. And even if you just, you just get your free chart and you're happy with that, that's okay too, because even that is amazing to just have. It's like any tool in our toolbox. It just helps us remember and appreciate who we are.
Yeah.
And I feel really strongly about that, because when we understand ourselves and we can learn about ourselves a lot more, then we come home and everything just is brighter and fills us with more joy, because we understand who we are. And I think that's invaluable.
Oh, so much so. I love what you just said. And, that I always talk about the power within, and calling all the different parts of yourself back home, because you think all the answers are out there, but they're actually here. They're in you. There might be multi-layers and conditioning and all sorts of things, but just keep digging, just keep getting super curious. But yes, so there's one more question I have around human design for you. And that's, you did it for me the other week, and it was like putting Marcus's and mine's chart together, my husband and I's chart together, and looking at the different channels and things that sort of completed, or the centers that I didn't have that Marcus did have. Do you do that as well for people?
Yeah. So that's a compatibility chart. So when we're in the space of another person, we can take on, like you might have a gate in your design. I wish I had something to show you so that you could see me waving my hands around crazily here. So when you're in the space of somebody's energy, the energy field, then you can sample or take on some of that. So for example, I'll use you and me, Kate. I have no defined centers. I'm completely white. So it just means that it's my superpower that I'm so sensitive to people's energies, and it just flows through me. I'm sampling all the time. When you and I get together, and I've said this to you before, I feel clear-headed, and it's because you've got a defined head center. And all of a sudden it's just like my wishy-washy head and everything going in kind of goes, ooh, and I can think. It's like, oh, that's a really clear thought for me, and it feels good. So when you are and Marcus are around each other, you kind of you share your energies, and where you're not defined or where he is not defined, it lights up. But you also create channels. So there's certain channels that you have in your relationship. That is why you're together, and sitting down with couples and having those conversations is fascinating. Again, it's the same as your children. It's just like, there's a reason that this is why you might argue, or there's a reason this is why you're really both passionate here, and this is because of this channel when you are together. And when you're not together, so it is very fascinating. It's one of those deep dives, and you can't kind of get into it unless you sit down with somebody and you kind of explain it, because
it's fascinating.
It is very fascinating. Yeah, it is. It's very fascinating. And it's also why it's called the penta. So this is a family dynamic. So once we get into 2 or more people in our household, we form a penta, and the penta is the conditioning that we have. So it's really interesting when I work with clients one-on-one and we get really deep into it, the conditioning that we've been in most of our lives is because of our penta. So it would have been your family dynamic when you were growing up, and your kids will have that too. Because you're constantly in these energies always. So it's just not you. You kind of got to step yourself out of that sometimes and go, that was the penta that I was raised in.
Yeah, that's actually fascinating. I've never heard of that before. So thank you for sharing. I know that if I've been away, say running a holistic weekend with, a bunch of soul sisters, a tribe, and then I'm just like, oh, and then I come back into my penta. Sometimes I'm like, oh God, get me out of here. Or I have to actually step back, hand on heart, and just take some breaths and go, all right, is this me? Is this them? And sort of establish myself into that home. Have you felt that before?
Oh, absolutely. Well, as I said, I'm a reflector, so I have no open centers. And I find that when I've hardly been alone most of my life. I've been a mother for 28 years. So, I've always had somebody around. And it was only last year I actually took myself away into the middle of the desert. I went to Uluru for 4 days and I had nobody around me for 4 days, and it was heaven.
Mm.
I actually found me. So I've integrated that a lot with myself now, that I need to be away from people a lot to kind of feel into me, what you were saying. And then when I come in, I can kind of go, and when I know, which you were saying, when you walk into that house, you're feeling probably that manifesting generator energy is hitting you like a ton of bricks. And it's like, that's a way of you just going, yes, what you're saying, this is not me. And sometimes we physically just have to step back a few feet from people. Just stepping back is enough for us to go, oh, there I am. Okay, that's me.
Yeah, I love that. That is probably the most gold dust bit of information from all of this.
Yeah.
So if the listeners were wanting to find out more about human design or the beautiful work that you do, what advice would you have for them?
I definitely think go to Jovian Archive. We'll put some links in. Go to My Body Graph. Go to any of the free sites. Plug in your birth details. Have a look. They generally will give you some information about the types and your profiles. So really look at that. Like, just look at the ways that you can live by your strategy. So it'll have those things. Understand your type, which will be the two numbers. So one is a conscious and one is an unconscious. Read up on that. Plenty of free information. When you get, and if that's enough for you, that's enough. But when you get to the point that you really want to know more, and specifically want to know more, whether it's working better in your marriage, working better in your relationships, just finding you, that's when you reach out to somebody to do a reading for you. And there's many different ways that you can do those readings. A lot of them they'll take your information and your money, and then they'll go away for a day or two, because it does take a lot of work to really read a chart, because it's serious business. We want to make sure that we're providing the right information, and they will sometimes catch up with you on Zoom or whatever and go through it with you. Other people will just send you a PDF and a recording. I don't like to work that way. I actually like to go through it with people personally. Depending
they
on what
can
they
ask
want.
you questions, then I think that's super valuable, especially if that's their design. Like, it's important for them to be able to ask questions. Yeah.
But I think feeling into people's energy and research what you're looking for after you've got to that point. Like, you might be able to, find it out yourself. If you've definitely got a first line like me, you'll probably go down the investigative and you'll figure it out. And that's half the fun of it. Because we want to know. I think a lot of people, when they come to me, it's just like they just want the answers. And it's like, I can give you the answers, but you've got to feel it. You've got to experience it. You've got to live your design. That's where the beauty is. It's like when you can actually feel into it and live your design. So,
and it makes such a difference. I know that trying as hard as I can to live my design now, life feels so much clearer and lighter. So I love how you've encouraged the listeners there to do their own research first before getting the reading, and that will give you so many more questions. So I also highly recommend that, and second that is do it yourself and have the questions. So when you book with someone like the beautiful Annie, you've got a bit of depth or juiciness there to get the most out of it.
Yeah. And I've set up a free call kind of thing, like reach out, have a chat, figure out how it can work for you, or what the questions are that you're wanting to know. Because it could be at this point in your life, you just might need some career advice, or you might need, I get a lot of families are a big thing for me. It's mums, because I work predominantly with mums. They're finding out who they are, so then they can help their little people. So those kind of things, like find out what you want to know. What are those questions that you just like, how can my life just be easier, and how can I get through this? It's like, I can probably read it and I can tell you exactly what's going on.
It's so exciting. Highly recommend. Thank you so much, beautiful Annie, for your time today, all your knowledge and your wisdom. I know that there is 10 million things more we could talk about, but we might get you back on the call on the podcast at another stage. So you've got a podcast of your own. Did you want to tell the listeners about that one?
Yes. So again, it was me going down the whole, I needed more information, and I didn't like the cookie cutter approach to what a lot of people spat out, especially as reflectors, because we are rare. So I have my own podcast predominantly for reflectors, but we talk a lot about human design. It's Reflector Reflections. So that's just a passion project of mine. It's something that, again, I just went out and I needed to know more, and I'm building my army, building my reflector army, because, you know, we're told that we're unicorns and there's only 1% of us, but, you know, there's 1% of the whole world is still a lot of us around.
I know you've found some amazing people. I've listened to some of those conversations and I'm like, oh, this is some powerful stuff right here. So thank you, reflectors. And thank you, Annie, for being on our podcast today.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Bye.
Bye now.